It's a pleasure to talk to you about this film. It made me, remember my first day in journalism school where they taught us that the truth was the most important thing to preserve. Is this film for you kind of an homage to the dying art of investigative journalism that is kind of being replaced by pop-out news?
A little bit. I mean, I think that investigative journalism is in danger now. I think that there's less and less money for it, and less patience to the time deep dive stories take. At the same time, I think hopefully people will see it and become inspired a little bit and talk about the fact that it's so important for us as a society to have the reporters who are able to do those kinds of stories.
I think the role of cinema in all this, because this is not a documentary, this is a feature film, is not, if not to represent them well, but at least represent the people and the facts of this story.
Absolutely, no.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is a film first and foremost, and my job as a filmmaker is to tell an interesting story first and foremost. I had a wonderful writing professor who once said, and I don't know if it translates as well, but if you want to send a message, call Western Union. Your job is to entertain, to tell us a compelling story. And so first and foremost, I think that's what we do in this film. But I also think if it can leave people with a couple questions about where we are in terms of our media and how we get our information and corporatization and all of that other stuff, then that's just a bonus.
The story is all the more resonant today, especially with the day and age of social media and all these things. I think the resonance of this story is very important in 2015. So do you think it was the right time to tell it?
I think it's actually the perfect time to tell it. And what's really interesting is the first time I wrote the first draft of the film was in 2007. And I very quickly realized that we sort of hadn't been far enough away in order to sort of recognize it. And people read the story and they saw it more as a political film. And it's not. It's about journalism. And I think we need that kind of time and that objectivity with all things to sort of recognize them a little bit more for what they are.
It's also about the choices you make in the professional life and in the personal life and how they interact together. So how important was it to have obviously the endorsement of Mary and Dan, her having written a book and them being so excited about this film finally coming to light?
Well, they were incredibly important. And the film, as you say, is based on Mary's book, so we had to get her permission in terms of optioning the book. And the fact that she opened her life to us and that Dan opened his life to us, especially about something that was very painful. It's not like I called them up and said, I want to make a movie about the greatest thing that ever happened to you. Yeah. I called them up and said, I want to make a movie about possibly the worst thing you've ever been through. And you're not going to have any editorial say at the end of the day about what's going to be in the film. So the fact that they still would put themselves on display and they still would open up their lives to me is an incredible gift. And their relationship to me is what really drives the film. And so the fact that they allowed me to be with them and observe them and figure out what makes them tick with each other was fantastic.
Yeah, what you said is very interesting. It's even more compelling to talk about the downfall of their success than it would have been to make a movie about their many successes in the past.
Yeah.
What would you like audiences also to take out of this? Obviously, this is being shown to an international audience. It started by being quite an American story, but I think it resonates everywhere.
I do too, and because I think the themes that we talk about in terms of journalism and truth and the search for it and where we are as a society and corporatization, all of that is not just in America. All of that is around the world. And as citizens of the world, I think it's always a good idea to pay attention to that, because when we don't, sometimes you can wake up and the world has changed and you don't even know how it happened.
Because this is now a film and we can have a point of view, do you think this story was about losing one's career over wanting to preserve the truth?
Well, I certainly don't think that was Mary's intention.
Yeah.
But I do know that they did the best job that they could. They felt they had the story when they ran it. I think from their point of view, they don't feel like they got the backing they needed. But one of the things that was important to us as filmmakers was to let you make up your own minds and let you see the film and decide. And what's been great for me is to watch people come out of the movie in the lobby and they'll be having a discussion about it. And husbands and wives will be arguing about it. And one will be saying, I completely understand why she was let go at the end. And the other person will say, what are you talking about? How could you? So exactly. I love that as a filmmaker. I love movies that ask questions of people.
And there's also a serendipitous element to it. What if her mother hadn't died? What if the story had been told differently? What if it had gone on air in a different time? Yeah. I thought that was quite interesting as well, don't you think?
I do too, yes. And we were, in the United States, it was such an interesting time because we were coming out of the 2000 presidential election, which was decided by 536 votes, which is incredible if you think about it, the slim margin of victory there. And then September 11th happened. And this was our first election since September 11th. So we were in such uncharted territory. We had soldiers in 2 theaters of war for the first time in generations, and we had a president who was accused of not fulfilling his own military service. There was so much going on when this happened, and the stakes were so high that I think it was just a fascinating story to tell.